Well, hello to the Freight Nation out there. I hope wherever you are today, that it has been a productive day for you and you've kicked your year off and things are optimistic for you and you're looking forward to a good 2025. Man, I tell you what, 2025 is, if you know me, Freight Nation out there, I'm pretty optimistic about everything. My glass isn't just half full, it's overflowing all the time. And part of that's because that's my personality. The other part is I get to work in transportation, an industry that I love, an industry that has served me, helping me grow in so many ways. And that's really what Freight Nation is about. It's about hearing the stories about other people's lives and their journey in transportation and how you can pick up some information, some tips, some expert advice on how you can help your operation or your endeavor or your dream of running your trucking transportation operation. So we love doing it here for everybody at Truckstop. And so this is going to be another great episode of Freight Nation. I know I say that every time. It's because I get so excited about my guests every single time because they're always so fun to talk to. And one is this next one coming up today. You just better buckle in, Freight Nation, because this is going to be a lot of fun because it's going to be a lot about his journey. It's going to be a lot about the technology aspect of things, but it's also going to be about mindset and about doing things that you think are maybe way beyond your capacity. So that'll be the encouragement today. So joining me today on Freight Nation is now my good friend. We met at the Broker Carrier Summit earlier this year, and his name is Robert Bain. So Robert, thanks for joining us on Freight Nation today.
Yeah, I'm honored to be on. Thanks for having me, Brent.
Well, what's interesting is I did not know this. So Freight Nation, I didn't know that I was I was backstage. We're about to go on stage to do something. And this guy with this long beard, he's actually got shorts on at the time. He just walks in. I kind of think maybe, is he like running the production or something back here? Because lots of the production guys got shorts on. And then he walks on stage. I'm like, wait a minute, who is this guy? So that was Robert. And then as I did some more research on Robert, I realized really what impact he's had on transportation. And he's had such a wonderful career. And each time he's learned along the way, and he's really beginning to kind of find his groove into what's going on for transportation, where he can really give back to the industry that's helped him so much. So Robert, I always like to start, and everybody at Freight Nation knows this, I like to start with when you were an 18-year-old young man, I'm assuming you didn't have this long beard that everybody sees.
I did not. I had nice little baby face, man.
You might've had some hair up here too. I don't know. So what was, when you were young, like, what did you think, like, this is what I'm going to do for my life? And then when you finish that sort of pivot, like what things helped you realize, okay, well, transportation is an industry I think I want to be in?
So I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. And so that exposed me to a lot of different stuff. One of the things it exposed me to is soccer. Yes, I played soccer for almost 30 years. And I played at a very high level, played in high school. So in high school as a striker. And then in college, I moved to the wing. And then I played semi-pro, I played professionally, and had an opportunity to try out with the Chicago Fire and with the MLS. And so soccer was my first passion. And that is absolutely what I pictured myself doing. I wanted to play professionally. Ultimately, I wanted to represent my country, because I think from a civilian perspective, I think that's the highest honor you can get, is to represent your country in sport. And so I wanted to do that. And I worked really hard at it, and I had a lot of really cool opportunities. I am forever thankful for the pitch, because my best man at my wedding was one of my teammates. I met my wife at a soccer tournament. It's like soccer gave me a lot, right?
You met your wife at a soccer tournament?
Yes, I did.
Is she a soccer player?
She was in high school. She played because they started the program her sophomore year, and she's like, she basically got begged to do it. So she did tennis and soccer during the spring. So we lived in Iowa. That's what they did it. And we met at a tournament because I was playing with a buddy of mine. He's like, hey, I know you're just fresh back from, I'd been gone for a little while. I left town and quit school. I was coming back to school. He's like, hey, you get some touches in before you go back to school and play. And the next call was to her. And he's like, I need 2 more girls. It's either you or my mom. Please come play on this team. There's a co-ed team. And that's how she and I met. That's a whole different story there. So that was my goal. I wanted to play soccer. And as I started looking at what the reality of that was going to look like, I started looking at what careers were going to be long-term sustainable. The biggest reason I thought about that is my dad worked in telecom. He worked for a company called NCI. You probably remember them. And so he pre-WorldCom everything. So that's what moved us to Iowa, because their 3 major hubs were Pentagon City, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Colorado Springs. And so took us out there, and Dad couldn't keep up with the advancements of it. And not that he didn't want to, he wasn't able to. And so I saw as his roles, which, took care of our family for a long time, were gone. I'm like, okay, I need to find something that is going to be sustainable and be long-term. So my first idea was like, I'm going to go into the restaurant industry. I love cooking food. I love serving people. I love the services, like the chaos of the service industry. I'm so with it. As that's what I wanted to do. And I started looking at, when I was going to school, like, hey, I'll go for business, go get my master's in hospitality and restaurant management. life had a different idea because I met my wife at said tournament. 5 months later, we were pregnant, and all of a sudden now, like, life matters.
It's really real.
Yeah. Like you finding out that I'm going to be a dad at 20 years old and she's 19. This girl I didn't even know for 6 months was terrifying, right? So like, okay, like dove right into working in restaurants, did that, and I'd done that off and on through high school as well. But what I realized is it is very hard to be a young parent and do that. The wages aren't great. The timing sucks. I didn't like coming home for like a French fry. And so I started looking around for other opportunities. And it's what it is, man. Like, you get in the back of the kitchen, I know, back of the house and everything. And I remember thinking to myself, I need an office job. And I saw something about logistics and freight and trucking. I'm like, you know what? Like, doesn't matter how technologically advanced we get, you can't email a pallet anytime soon. That's going to be around for a while. And that's when I started shifting towards, I'll look at logistics companies, and I can get into how I actually got in too. Like, I don't know if you wanted to.
Before you do that though, because I love when I talk to people that are athletes, and because my dad was an athlete, he played professional football, and so he would teach me when I was a kid that keep your athletic mind no matter what happens to you in life, because you need to always compete, you need to always see things through, you need to always have grit and gumption and stay at it and be a good teammate, all those things. So how did your athletic mind help you when, like, for instance, here you are, you're a young parent, you need to start your career? How, because this kind of goes back to kind of mindset, where we're going to end up, Freight Nation, we're going to end up talking about real mindset here. But how did that mindset help you at that very young part of your life?
There are a couple ways that it did. From a long-term and a philosophical perspective, very much it was, all right, I am once again the underdog. Like, when I moved to Iowa, I was big fish in a small pond playing soccer, but I lived in Eastern Iowa, which, again, this is soccer politics, but unless you went to Iowa City High or West High School, you did not play in the ODP program. You did not get a chance to. You would get a tryout, but they would immediately cut you. And my group, the 82ers, as the 18-year-olds were known as at that time, we were the first group that kind of broke that barrier. And that was really important, is I got a chance to go on to the regional camp and play, and it was super cool. And so, but I was the underdog. My high school, I'm embarrassed to say this, we lost every game my freshman year. I played varsity all 4 years, and we lost to a high school, Waterloo East, that has won 6 games its entire program, 40 years. And that was one of them. And so I was like, okay, that's never going to happen again. And so it was, we had to rally this group. We had 4 freshmen that started that. Yeah, it was tough, man. It was not fun. But by the time we were seniors, we came with a 1 game of state, and our team has never had a losing season since the class 2000, which is awesome. 25 years, we've never had a losing season.
Standards. Yeah, I love it.
And so we are not only, so now in my life, I'm like, all right, I am once again the underdog. And once again, I have to build something that's going to last way longer than 13 games or, 90 minutes. I have a person now that matters. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with me and her. Like, you can never predict that, but like, he's my blood. And so like, I have to do a lot of things while I'm doing that. And then on the flip side of that is like, tactically, the chaos that is being on the pitch at full speed, that is very much conducive to not only the kitchen, but also a freight floor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can see that. Definitely. Yeah.
So that prepared me to kind of be able to operate as I need to, but also see all the things that are going on around and be situationally aware of everything. So that prepared me for that, though, being in those environments. I played in front of a lot of people too. So like, pressure wasn't a problem. And I think one of the things that one of my coaches taught me very, very early, Arturo played at a very high level for Mexico. I should play for the junior national team. He explained to us, and we're all 12 years old, pressure is a privilege. So few people ever get the chance to feel that.
That's USTA courts in New York City where they play the U.S. Open. Pressure's a privilege. I think that's Billie Jean King's quote.
It is.
It is, yeah.
But imagine being told that at 12 years old. They're like, because you don't get that. Like, what do you mean? And then you start to feel like, oh, no, this is, because I see all these other people that go, nah, man, like, I could never deal with that. I get the chance to. How awesome is that?
Right, yeah, no doubt.
And same thing with being a young parent. Like, I have this pressure, and this pressure is a privilege, as challenging as it was and tough to, go through that. And we went through hell. It was tough. But that pressure was a privilege, and it shaped both me, my wife, and our son, and now the rest of our children and everything. So benefit, but certainly going through it was woof.
That's tough. Yeah. All right. So you looked at transportation and overall the logistics part of the marketplace in the United States. You said, I think that's a sustainable career. So all right. So what was the first pivot point? Where did you start moving into that?
So I applied for a job and I got an interview, and I walked in, and I think we talked about this during the prep for the call, but the guy that was interviewing me, he played soccer against me in high school, and we did not like each other. He was a dirty defender. I didn't like him. I have a huge ego and a big mouth, and I will let you know it if I beat you. And so like we were polite, we were professional, but it's like we both like we know where this is going. But part of his process was he walked any interviewee around the office to kind of show what the culture was like. Because again, it's a freight floor, it's different. I think anybody who's been around logistics businesses knows like it ain't for everybody. As he was trying to have the culture kind of scare people. I was like, I'm with it. Like, I love this.
Yeah. You're competitive, so that didn't scare you at all.
100%. Like I listen, like I'm the baddest dude in the room wherever I go, period, full stop. And I've been that way since I was 10 years old.
That's a good attitude to have. I love it.
So I overhear this conversation going on. This young lady's on the phone. She's an account manager working with one of their clients, and he is moving an SLR McLaren Mercedes. Now, so we wind back to this time frame. This is 07, 08. This is when they had first come out, and that partnership was huge. It was a big announcement. The sticker price for these cars was $750,000. They were going on the secondary market for 1.5, $2 million, 50 Cent paid like $2.2 million out the first one in the US. So it was a big deal. And I overhear this and I look on the screen and there's an AMG 63 Mercedes on the screen, a stock photo. It's got the MSRP on there. I'm like, that's not the right car.
Oh yeah, not even close. Yeah.
Yeah. So she had the right insurance, but like also make sure like get in a covered carrier. Like you do not want that on an open deck transporter. And he's like, no, my client knows what he has. I'm like, he may know what he has, but that picture's not it. And she's like, nope, like he's giving the information. It's fine. So we had this like 20-second argument and I'm like, hey, you know what? You work here. I don't, you do your thing. So I was right. She was not. Or at least I thought that as I walked out. Get a call a week later. You're in. Awesome. Come in, you know, start my new job. And I go over because I want to see how it ended. And her desk is like empty. And I'm like, what's going on? And my new boss, like, hey, you know, come sit down. And he sits me down with the vice president of operations. And he's like, this is the guy. He's like, oh, you're the guy. What have I done? Like, that's my first day. Like, I'm already famous. So during transport, the upper hydraulic on the transporter failed, smashed it on top of the car, $175,000 damage claim. Carrier only had $150,000 in cargo insurance. Now, for those of you working in the intermediary space, who's responsible for that delta when you've got a claim that big? You. And so that 20-second discussion that they went one way cost them $25,000. And during their postmortem, she brought that up, trying to defend herself. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I interviewed you coming around, you know, not going to hire him. He's not what we're looking for, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he knew that walking by, hire him and you're fired.
Right. Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. So he fired her on the spot and brought me. I took.
You have good observation skills.
Yeah. So once again, the chaos of everything going on, and this is like, he wasn't even introducing me. I just overheard it. And so, yeah, so that situational awareness was a blessing in disguise there. And then we got absorbed by CRST. And that's really when like my career truly started.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah. Because like things were kind of weird over there. I'm not going to throw all their dirty laundry out there, but yeah, a bunch of us got absorbed by CRST. And so I was a fleet manager there. I worked in customer service. I worked after hours. I worked at the accident hotline.
Was that what you wanted to do?
I wanted to do as much as I could. I wanted to learn as much, because as I started to realize how big the space was, I'm like, this is one of the major carriers in the space. Like I can learn everything here. And so it was great. So I went over the logistics side. I started learning more about that on at CRST International. I learned about drivers, you know, because there are drivers coming in and out all the time. So it was really, really good. It was an awesome experience. And my one issue is like, I hated living in Iowa. Going from Northern Virginia to Eastern Iowa, the culture shock is wild. One, everyone looks like me. I didn't like that. Like I love having a diverse group of friends and experiences. And it's just not there. It is a little bit more now, but it definitely wasn't there in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right. Okay.
So we started looking around and I'm like, well, I want to stay in transportation. So there's really only a few places to go that are close enough that we can still see our family. And that's Chicago, St. Louis, Minneapolis, or Kansas City. Minneapolis, too cold. I hate St. Louis. So it was Kansas City or Chicago. My wife's best friend lived out here at the time. And we joked about it. Like my teammates from college, a bunch of them live in Kansas City on the Kansas side. And I was like, well, we could go there. My wife's like, yeah, remember when we invited them to our wedding and none of them showed? No, we're not going to move there. I'm like, cool, Chicago it is. So that's how we get to Chicago.
Yeah, I got it. All right. So CRST, and you've worked at some pretty cool operations over the last few years until you got to GLCS. And so talk a little bit about your experience at those. Then I want to jump into, you know, kind of the uniqueness of GLCS, because it's in logistics, but it's a logistics consultant company, you know? So yeah, which is super cool, right? So, because you've got some really cool formulas and ideas and methodologies that you bring that you guys give in your consulting. But before you do, Bert, you talk about GLCS, I want you to talk a little bit about, like, you worked at some of the operations that I know. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk through those just a little bit, and then we'll get to GLCS.
So I helped start a couple of brokerages here in Chicago. And then, really my first like big break into leadership was at a company called Visual Pack Logistics and DP Express, as part of the Visual Pack companies in Waukegan, Illinois. I was there for about 5 years. I can never say enough positive things about Steve Quain, who gave me the opportunity to be a leader there. Really, he handed me the keys to the castle at, in my late 20s he said, "Hey, we have a trucking company, go grow it." And we did, and it was awesome. And I wore every hat for about 3 years. Literally, I was doing
That
dispatch
helps a lot.
sales.
In the long run, that helps you a lot. Yeah.
It was huge. It was huge. Crazy hours. It was very, very challenging. It was a lot of demands on me. I was able to finally hire staff, but we grew the thing, and we grew from about a 6 truck and 20 trailer shuttling operation to a really nice like 50 tractor, a couple hundred trailer operation, based around the Midwest, and it was cool. It was awesome. But the downside of that is I kind of hit my ceiling over there, and I was looking for some different opportunities. I really wanted to get into the technology space because I had started dabbling in the tech with like ELDs, because we had to get those into the trucks with our TMS and updating that. And so, like, as I was looking, this little startup reached out to me called Uber Freight, and
I've heard of them.
Yeah, they were hiring basic industry veterans to start this stealth piece of their business. And so I went through the interview process there, very grueling. And it became a key moment in my career. I have a final interview scheduled with the guy who's going to be my direct manager, a guy named Chris Glassbach. He used to be at C.H. Robinson. He was at Uber. He's done a lot of really cool stuff within the space. And we have an hour-long interview scheduled after I've already done almost 10 hours of interviews. And he asked me 2 questions, and he says, "Cool, we're going to offer out to you." And a couple weeks later, I started. And Glatz has become one of the most pivotal mentors in my career. He's been awesome in helping this guide, where I've gone and some pitfalls to avoid, and help me get in certain doors. So it was incredibly fortuitous for me. But then coming in at Uber during their rise, like basically coming right out of stealth into that $1 billion run in 14 months, it wasn't real life. It was insane. I think my first day, we moved like 250 loads that day for the first time. And 4 months later, moved 1,000 loads in a day. And so, but within all that, I'm learning all this different technology. Because again, you got some of the best and brightest minds in tech startup in San Francisco, that are all working on your stuff. And so it was great to bring those together with all these industry experts and veterans and start to build really, really cool things. And that started to really get the hamster on the wheel of like, this tech space within logistics is big and it's growing, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So again, thinking sustainability for my career, I need to get at least in this wave. I may not be able to get in front of it, but at least into it so I can ride this, for the next 20, 30 years. And so that's what I started doing. I started educating myself on anything I could when it came to tech, within the space, whereas TMSs, ELDs, automation, AIs, it was really starting to come through. Started figuring out the blockchain thing, but that kind of fell on its face when it comes to logistics. So, and so I moved on from there, and I worked, actually ran the brokerage for QuadGraphics, huge printer up in Sussex, Wisconsin. So I ran their brokerage for a time. I then worked at Shipwell, was a TMS provider, which was awesome because then I got to go behind the scenes of some of the tech and really get kind of deep in that. And so that was excellent. From there, I started consulting and started working with some great organizations like Metaphora, helped to start a stealth startup here in Chicago for about a year. They needed a operations person, and so I was able to come in and do some stuff there. And then in 2024, I started at GLCS, and all comes together where I'm able to bring, I've sat in, especially from a broker's perspective, every operational seat you could think of. And even on the carrier side, I've sat in basically every operational seat. I've driven the trucks. It's like I've sat everywhere. And so I can speak the language. I know what they've done. I know what to do. And then I bring that tech background too of like, all right, how can we apply this to make their lives simpler and better? And I don't say easier, but more efficient. And so that's really what I've kind of mashed all that together into this consulting, advisory, and technology expertise, and what I do with my career.
Well, it's interesting. When you said Metaphora, it kind of all came back to me. I think that's maybe where I ran into you the first time.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So good friends with all the guys over there at Metaphora, and I appreciate what they do.
Yeah, they've done great things. Ryan and Peter they're top-notch folks, and anybody that works with them is they're in good hands. So
yeah, for sure they are. All right, so you decided to take the job at GLCS because of a lot of your experience in the marketplace, and so So I'm not looking for a great detailed explanation of GLCS, but you guys, specifically take a certain approach when you're doing consulting. So, like for instance, once you've had, like, how many years have you been in transportation?
I'm going on year 19.
Okay, so you're way past being an experienced sort of expert at freight movement and freight transportation. So, what one of the things that would be that I think is unique is when you can bring that experience into someone else's operation and help them understand, kind of like, these are sort of industry standards. These are things maybe you should do more of. These are things you should do less of. And I know that you bring that in to the businesses that you're consulting with GLCS. Talk about your approach to designing those things.
So we start typically, again, from a tech perspective. Also, our focus is around, your IT stack, your tech stack, and how you can improve that and make it run better. The biggest thing when it comes to that is you have a lot of folks, especially over the last like 3 or 4 years, there's all these shiny objects out there, right? You've got this tool and that one, and this one's going to be the silver bullet that fixes your business. This one's going to, drive, $100 million worth of revenue for you. So try to calm all that noise. Like, all right, this is what you need. You need a TMS, you need a freight pay and audit, you need financials, you need a CRM, and there's a couple of communications tools you need. And like, let's pare it down and say, okay, now these are nice to haves. Do you still want them? And then cool, how do you use them? And then overarching over all that is, how do you keep all this stuff secure? Because what I've found, I'm sure you've seen this too, you guys working in technology, there are so many tech stacks out there that are based like a Jenga tower. They're just waiting for one thing to fall. And it's not a knock on anybody. I mean, let's be real. Most tech professionals in transportation are just converted operations people.
Yeah, a lot of them are. Yeah.
And they're doing great work. And again, I take nothing away from any of those folks, but there's a difference when you have somebody who's got a computer science background and has extensive training in that, and somebody who's slung freight and figured out how to do some ones and zeros on key point in 2010. Big difference. So knowing that's kind of where we start, is like, all right, like, where are you guys at? What's the level you want to be at? What does utopia look like? And then we start to work backwards from there. But ultimately what it is like, the technology is going to get you there. And how do we make sure that the dollars you spend on that are actually being spent well and not just going off into the ether?
Yeah, for sure. So you have a couple of different approaches. I remember one of the things you were talking about, your carrier network assessment approach you do. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's unique. And then I want to ask you a question about being a consultant in general.
Yeah. So with our network assessment, this is all designed around, you look at all the fraud that's out there right now, and I don't point a finger at any load boards or anything else out there. Like, there are bad guys out there. They want to get freight. They want to get stuff for free. That's what's going on. And they'll take any tool they can to get it. And so knowing that, and knowing that realistically, we're always 1 to 2 steps behind them, how do we make it more difficult for them to be bad to us? So when we look at a carrier network, we will look at the type of freight that's being run. We'll look at the type of carriers. We'll look at where they're based. So we look at their statistically, this is where you're going to be more exposed. And then we look at the processes and we look at the technology tools. So whether that's going to be your carrier vetting, so that's going to be your highways, your freight validates, your verified carriers of the world, how are you utilizing that? Because ultimately, if you truly don't know who you're doing business with, then you're exposing yourself and your business to way more than you realize. And I'm not going to go on a Matt Leffler type of talk when it comes to legal stuff, but when you look at all these different verdicts that are going on right now, all it's going to take is one Supreme Court decision that says, yes, we can transfer the responsibility to a broker. And that becomes a landmark case that now every broker is on the hook for every single load for all dollars for all eternity. That's a problem. So how do you mitigate that and make it so that even if that happens, your business can still run and you're not necessarily going to be as exposed to everything?
Yeah, no doubt. So, hey, but before we swap into the consulting question, I know you mentioned something about the 3 pillars, and I thought that was like such sage advice. All right, so Freight Nation, get a pen handy if you got one, and write these 3 things down, because I thought these were unique. If you're okay to share them, if this is not
absolutely, I love talking about these. And
let's talk about the 3 pillars, and then I want to ask you the question, and then I want to shift into the Broker Carrier Summit, which is another brainchild of all, but you and a few friends, right? You and a few pals. Right. So let's talk about the 3 pillars.
So 3 pillars of operations. This is going to be extreme ownership, customer experience, and free cash flow. So I start with that. And whenever I tell people that, they go, okay, that makes sense. Cool. But what's important is these 3 things are intertwined. If you've never read the book Extreme Ownership, I'm telling you right now, and by the way, I don't get paid by Jocko. I don't get any kind of kickbacks. Go buy it. Go get it. Listen to it. Read. I don't care. It's an easy read. It's very simple, but the lessons in there are huge. But the concept is, everything is controllable, even the things you don't believe are controllable. I explain this to my children sometimes. Like, well, somebody didn't tell me information. Could you ask about it? Well, I didn't know I had to. Assume you have to. Assume no one's going to give you anything and you have to go and take it in the proper ways. So, and then if you say, hey, I told somebody this, but they didn't do it right, go, okay. That means you didn't explain it well enough. That's on you. And that's a tough lesson for anybody to hear. Like, well, I explained it well enough for me. Like, great. Your understanding and your lens of the world is different than mine. If I tried to explain to you how to get under 1,000-pound squat, you're not going to grasp that. You're not, because I just have a different lens I see that through versus like, if you're going to tell me how to run a marathon, nope, not happening. So knowing that you have to be able to equate those things. So that's part of, and that's that extreme ownership, knowing that I can control everything also means that when things do go bad and you do a postmortem, you go, okay, I know moving forward, I change this, I do this, and it creates a flywheel of constant improvement. So that's one. Customer experience. The customer isn't always right, but the customer still needs to pay you. So you need to make sure they feel right. Customer experience is paramount. Your intent means nothing. Their experience is paramount.
Oh yeah. There you go. Oh, that's a great way. Say that again.
Your intent means nothing. Their experience is paramount.
Oh, listen up, Freight Nation. So important. All right. So important.
It's big there. So understanding that like when you own everything, that means you also own your customer's experience. See how this is all going to start to play together.
Yeah, sure.
When customers have great experience, even if it's not the ideal outcome, one, they still pay their bill, but two, they continue on as a customer, and that creates a floor where you continue to build off of a base that you do with your business. That then goes into free cash flow. You own everything, you get great customer experience, they pay their bill, and you make sure that you have cash running. Cash flow is so important in a brokerage business. Because let's be real, if you move a load, you get $1,200 from your customer, you pay a carrier $1,000. Carrier most times expecting to get paid in 7 days, right? They need quick pay, whatever it's going to be. You're holding the bag for 30 days to your customer, at least. And a lot of them are extending out to 60 days. So you better have good cash flow. But if you have, and that's something that I pulled from actually customer experience and free cash flow from the Amazon way. Talk about Jeff Bezos' leadership as he grew Amazon. And he always talked about in his letter to investors, I don't care about profits right now. I don't care about revenues. I don't care about margins. What I care about is free cash flow. My free cash flow is what we can actually spend on everything. If that is done right, that means we can, and then you take it back. If the cash is right, that means I can invest in my customer experience. I can invest in my people through bonuses, through incentives. And when they are incentivized to own everything and they get it, they continue to own everything, which creates a good customer experience, which creates more free cash flow. So this flywheel, these three things, you can build everything else around them. But when one of these three pillars goes away, the house starts to crumble.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. That's some great advice, Freight Nation. I hope that you took those down. If not, please rewatch this again and write it down, because that's three great pieces of advice. I've been doing this business thing for a long time, back to even when I was working for my dad as a very young man, back when I had lots of curly brown hair. And it's always about those three things, man. It's always about those three things. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. So I'm going to, real quick, if somebody wanted to be a consultant, what's the first piece of advice you'd give them? Just a short, what's the elevator pitch you tell them on being a consultant?
Start learning more than you need to.
Oh, yes, sir. That's a fantastic one. Yeah.
Start doing the stuff way before you need it. No different than when you start networking, build your network before you need it. I have been very, very lucky that if I've ever had to transition roles, whether it's, my choice or somebody else's, I haven't had to do a traditional job interview in almost 10 years.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, look, we got about 12, 13 minutes left, and I do want to cover the endeavor that you and a few of your close friends started with this Broker Carrier Summit. Because look, I saw all the emails and stuff out there. Didn't go to the first one, and I went to the one in Kansas City, and I was blown freaking away by, oh my gosh, the genuineness of the event itself and how you guys were creating and doing it. Tell me how you guys came up with this. And I kind of know a little bit about it, but tell the Freight Nation watchers and listeners, what was the genesis? What was the why behind this?
So I met Dan Lindsay at an event in Las Vegas in early 22. We just connected, like we were two peas in a pod. And so as we're just had to catch up, we're talking. I was talking about consulting stuff because that was my role at that time. And they really weren't in a place at that time, the brokerage he was running, that they would need her or want consulting services. But I'm like, hey, like I'm going to be at TIA in April in San Diego. Like, let's grab a drink. So we went to the kickoff event and just hated it. It was the venue. It was great because they maximized the space, but it was just cram full of people. And I'm like, I need out of here, man. I'm gonna lose it. And he agreed. So we went, we grabbed dinner, and then we ended up at the San Diego Whiskey House. And I always kind of preface everything with that. Like, we got there, he and I are both whiskey guys. And I'm like, dude, let's go check it out. 4,000 bottles of different whiskey from all over the world. You got India, you got, Chinese with Japanese whiskey, Scotch, which are both Scotch guys. So we're talking, and I'm like, dude, what do you want to do? Like, I'm in this weird spot too. Like, I'm in, I'm about to turn 40. Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? He's like, I don't know, man. And as we start talking, he's like, I've had this idea for a few years. And I'm like, go on. It's like, it's crazy. It's silly. So I just keep pushing him drinks to get him to get Dan to talk about it. He's like, I want to do like a conference or like a symposium, like something that there's no shippers. We're not worried about customer stuff necessarily. Like, brokers and carriers hate each other, but they need each other. How do you make this work? Like, I want to do some, like, I don't know. And I'm like, and I remember talking about it. I'm like, yeah, it'd be like some kind of like broker carrier, something like the BCS. This is as they were getting rid of the BCS in college football and bringing in the college football playoff. And he's like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'm like, dude, you know what, man? You ever do something like that, call me.
Right.
And that's the lesson learned. If Dan Lindsay ever gives you an idea and you say that, he's going to call you. So a few months later, he did. And he's like, hey, April 23, we're going to do this. I'm like, oh, this is a thing. Okay. He reached out to me, to Troy Wheaton, Leonard's Express, a couple other folks, and Matt Annis. And we put together this thing. And it was, because it's emotional when I think about it, because you've seen how it's grown. There were 35 people at the first one, and in Indianapolis. And then we had like 35 watching online. The stream was terrible. It was absolutely garbage. We had no production. Now, we literally were doing it from a laptop. The mics didn't work in the hotel. It was just crazy. And we had done, and it was great. And everybody shaking hands. It's like, hey, and Dan's like, hey, I got the cigar bar I always go to here in Indy. Let's go. And that 20-minute drive, our phones go ballistic. Text messages, DMs, also, dude, when's the next one? This is awesome. All these people are talking about it. And I'm like, what have we done? Fast forward to October of 23, and we're in Tampa, and there's almost 250 people there. And then you saw it in Kansas City, and then here in Fort Worth, we just had in October, 496. And to go from, so in essentially 18 months, to go from 35 people to almost 500. And the whole idea of it is, how do we bridge this gap? How do we create lasting partnerships? How do we bring back that relationship piece of the business? Like, the rest of this, like tender and freight, changing appointments, like all that stuff that the bots can do. How does, Bain Logistics and Hutto Trucking, how do we work together so I can, my freight keeps moving, I grow your business. If I can get you enough that you got to go buy another truck, like, dude, how awesome is that? And that's what we're building. And that's and we want this community, because, like, the end of the day, like, if we are a random broker and carrier that meet each other on, on a load board or like that, it's a little easier sometimes to break that connection. It's like, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
I'm never going to see this person. Yeah, very transactional.
Yeah.
But like, no, man, look, we've broken bread together. Like, we know each other. We've sat face to face.
You're invested in each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that personal connection is such a big difference in business, because I've firmly, my dad taught me this years ago, all things being equal, people do business with friends. All things being unequal, they still do business with friends. And so that's what I want. And that's what I saw the broker carrier stuff being able to do, is like, let's create this basically friendship network, and this isn't all kumbaya stuff, but like, that pushes these businesses forward. And all the bad actors, you go deal with the scraps, have fun.
Well, what's funny is, sorry, Freight Nation, that's another great piece of advice. Talked about the relationship in this, and I've been talking about relationships for a long time, Robert, and within the industry, and how important they are. And I go back to what I was taught back in 1998 by one of the greatest leaders I've ever been around. And it was the CEO of the media company I worked for that was in transportation. And he said, people do business with people that they like, that they know, and that they trust. If they don't like you, they can't know you. If they don't know you, they won't trust you. So you got to have the relationship. So thank you so much for saying that, man. So that's exciting to see that event grow. I know we were heavily involved in the one in we were beginning to get involved in Kansas City, and then we're heavily involved in Fort Worth. And I was really impressed by the event, just in its desire to kind of continue to connect both the two entities, both the carrier and the brokerage company in the marketplace. So, all right, look, we got enough time to talk about the mindset, because here's the thing, Freight Nation. I want you to hear Robert's heart about his mindset in this, because he does something that there's like only a handful of people in the world do. he on the description that my team put together, one said very strong human. The other one said he lifts and moves things. I'm like, is he a fork truck or what's the deal? No, he calls it. He's got the nickname or the earned nickname, strongest man in logistics. And so I love that nickname, but there's a whole lot around it. So Robert, talk to the Freight Nation watchers and listeners, like why you have that nickname, and then why you care about why that's important in your life and in your business.
So when soccer was done for me, I needed something. I was getting older. I started lifting weights when I was 18 and got big quick. Awesome. I was a $150 when I graduated high school.
How did that affect your soccer? You got
very
big?
well. It was awesome. Like I was already strong. Like I was always strong, but it was great. Now all of a sudden I go from being 150 pounds when I graduated high school. So I'm 225 my senior year of college. Like, and I'm just this little meatball running around. And so for context, you've met me now and you've seen, so I walk around at 270 now. So like a lot of mass. But as I got older, it's like, okay, like the mileage is wearing. And so I needed to find something. I met this guy at the YMCA. Long story short, he bullied me into doing my first meet. I do my first meet and I was hooked. I always loved the concept of being strong, but I was hooked on it. And very quickly, I was introduced to a group at a gym in Joaquin. It was right down the street from where I worked up there. And these people now are some of my best friends. Some people see posts of me and like these 4 other enormous human beings. And Sean, Bill, Pat, and Steve are some of those important men in my life. And so as I started getting pretty good at this stuff, I'm like, man, I could like hit some cool numbers. Like, I just wanted to squat 600 pounds. So I knew one other person who ever done it. Like, I just want to squat 600 pounds. I think it'd be really cool. And I did that with no supportive equipment, nothing on my knees, no drugs. It's like this is cool. Like, this is dope. And I started getting exposed to a much more extreme niche of a niche, which is multiply powerlifting or equipped lifting. And that's when I started seeing the numbers that are just insane. Like I met people that squatted 1,200 pounds. I met women that squatted 800, 900 pounds. I'm meeting guys who bench 1,000 pounds. Like, this is cool. Like, I don't know if I could do this or not, but I kind of want to try. And so I made the decision in 2020 that I was going to jump over to the dark side and jump in the gear. And I started learning it. And like my first time really like going super heavy in a pair of squat briefs, I squatted 910. And my coach, my friend / coach, Sean, is like, dude, you could do like some real damage, right? Like, seriously. And so my very first time in a squat suit, this is full gear. So I've got my knee wraps on, I've got the squat suit, all the kinds of squatted 1,009 pounds. And it's training, so it's all practice. We're talking practice. And I'm like, but now all of a sudden, like, I can do this. Like, to your point of like, only a handful of people can do it. Less than 400 people have ever squatted 1,000 pounds in competition. And I'm like, I'm going to be one of those people. I'm going to do this. And so and I kind of had it in my head when I first started powerlifting, because I watched 1,000 pound squat at my first ever meet. And I'm like, that would be really neat. I don't know if I could do it, but it'd be really neat if I could do it. And so I started going down that path. And one of the things I always thought about, my parents told me this when I was a kid, is outside of school and your family, you need to find something.
Yeah, I agree. My dad always said that too. Yeah.
And that's what we go into soccer. Like, and for my dad, as long as it's legal, we'll support you 100%. Because for me, they needed to say that. So, I'm as an adult, I'm like, I still need that. I need something that I can be in the pursuit of. And I know, like, hey, guys in their 30s, what's it going to be? It's going to be either some, hobby sport, World War II documentaries, or smoking meat. I'm like, well, I like smoking meat, but I don't want to go buy all this stuff. So, and I like watching documentaries, so I can do that on my own time. So I'm going to pick up this silly hobby sport. And that's what I did. So what's cool though, is that I've coached my oldest daughter, for years. She's a mom now. And so she's focused on that. But, I coached Lily to 3 world titles, 6 national titles. Which was incredible. It was a great way for me and her to bond. My youngest son, Nolan, he's 16. He's a junior in high school. I've coached him for a few years. He's now on the powerlifting team at his high school. I'm going to be volunteering with them. So like, I'm getting to have this time with my children and connect with them, which is incredibly important. But they've also watched me do this. They've watched the process. They see dad go through the recovery process. And they've been there and they've watched the victories, and it's been super cool. And so when I hit that 1,000 pound squat, like, the whole family went crazy. Like, this is amazing. This is so cool that our dad did this. And then this past November, I squatted. And so after that meet where I squatted 1,000 pounds, I went through 2 years where I did not complete a meet. I bombed out of three straight meets, all high level, professional, invite only. And spend a lot of money to go travel to them, and I got dusted. And looking back on that now, I did finish very well in November. I'll talk about those numbers in a second. My kids watched me persevere because dude, I'm 42 years old. I'll be 43 in March. Like, it had been so easy for me to quit, especially like, my granddaughter was born in January of last year. Like, I have every reason to stop doing this crap. It kills my body. It's painful. Like, but I know I'm not done yet. And this sounds really hokey, but like, I don't want to die with the music inside me still.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to put it. I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I heard that from some people years ago, and it's always really stuck with me. So my kids got to watch that. And so then it comes to November and I do this meet, and I squatted 1151. I bent 611 and I pulled 705. 705 ties my biggest deadlift I've ever done in the meet. 611 was a 1 pound PR, which is awesome. Like to do that.
PR,
so,
man. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the squat was a 116 pound PR. And 1151. So for context, less than 400 people have ever squatted 1,000 pounds. 82 people have ever squatted 1,100 pounds ever in my weight class.
We've been recording it in history.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. In my weight class, 275 class, I am number 7 all time.
Wow. So Robert, where does that is, first off, congratulations. It's a fantastic, incredible accomplishment. But talk about how trying really, really hard things like that, difficult things, mental and physical, because there's two parts of that. How that helps shape your mindset. And then we're gonna close right on that mindset statement on how those really, really hard things, and with that athletic mind that you had growing up and still are, how does that shape your mindset as you go about your every workday?
So I had the audacity to believe I could do anything.
Yeah, amen to that. Hey, yep.
But I also had the humility to realize that like it's not going to be given to me. And I need to recognize those that have helped. One, that's huge because I don't do this alone. That's why I mentioned Sean, Bill, Pat, and Steve, because and the rest of the wolf pack. Like, I don't do any of that without them. I don't get to do any of this stuff without Nikki, Austin, Lily, Nolan, and Ella. I get to do none of this stuff without them. And so but again, it's having the audacity to believe that I am the baddest dude in every room I walk in and I can do anything.
Well, I don't know if I can back it up and say what you do, but I kind of feel that way.
But hey, if you're rolling with me, you're fine.
Well, Robert, man, thank you so much for ending on that. I love it. There's a great chapter in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books. I believe it's called David and Goliath, where it talks about the mindset of things. And then when you have a mindset on something, it's amazing what you accomplish. You know that you're good at something. And I don't mean like from an arrogant standpoint. I just mean like you have the confidence to pursue it. And when you have confidence to pursue something, man, great things come out of it. And obviously, as you talked about your career all the way from being a young man and a soccer player, all the way through logistics, all the way through being a young dad and navigating that and doing it well, and then kind of continue to pursue all the way through logistics to this consulting part of what you're doing and with GLCS. And so the idea that all of that's wrapped into, and your powerlifting and everything that you do that's all wrapped into the same person that we're Freight Nation, that we're looking here on the screen, that you're looking at on the screen here, which is it takes all parts of you to create success. And I think that's kind of what I take away from Robert. Robert, then thank you so much for being on Freight. Man, your story is awesome. So thank you so much for just telling it. And I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Absolutely. It was an honor to be here. And, Freight Nation, I'm excited to see all y'all out on the road.
Hey, man. Well, Freight Nation, back him up at the Broker Carrier Summit. If you need something with GLCS, give him a call, that sort of thing. But no, it's really important, Freight Nation, when you look at these things on your mindset and how you prepare your day. And so Robert is a perfect example, a flying example of somebody with humility, but also with drive to go and get it done. All right, Freight Nation, that's a wrap for this episode. Man, really appreciate you being here with us today. And don't forget, as we see on Freight Nation, Robert is a great example of work hard, work really hard, but be kind. All right, and be kind. And remember, he said this too, stay humble. It's important to stay humble because great things happen to people that are humble.
Just remember, kids, you can never outlift me in a butthole.
That's right. Amen to that. All right, Freight Nation, we'll catch you the next time. Thanks a lot. On behalf of the Truckstop team, thanks for listening to this episode of Freight Nation. To find out more about the show, head to truckstop.com/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until then, keep on trucking and exploring the open roads with Freight Nation, a trucking podcast.